So before we begin this morning session, let's just have a few minutes of meditation together. Just invite you to sit upright and relaxed. Taking a deep breath in And as you breathe out, just release, let go. Feel the body coming to a point of relaxation. And now gently draw your attention inwards to connect with the inner self, that living spark that you are. And holding this awareness of the self, the authentic self, the true self, just feel how naturally you begin to sense the essence of the self, which is peace. That peace is that deep inner foundation of my being. Allow the self to just go into the depth of that feeling of stillness, of deep inner serenity. And feel how that peace that I am anchors me to that which is true in me, anchors me to my inner power, the power of love that allows for transformation. And when I return to this place of my inner truth, very naturally I can go beyond all limited identities and memories and reconnect with that highest source, the divine. The one with whom I, the soul, have an eternal connection. And so just allow the self to feel that pure presence of the divine, that light of the divine, that love of the divine. Nourishing the soul. Allowing the self to return to that pure inner state, the original state of the soul. Restoring that feeling that I am peace, I am loved, and I am love. I am joy. And I'm guided by a deep inner truth. So just rest your awareness on this. And allow the power of this awareness to hold you and guide you. Om Shanti. Thank you. So we have a lovely day ahead of us today. I think yesterday was a day of unpacking what we've come with. And we needed that space and time to really just listen to ourselves and listen to each other. And today is a day that we will do more deeper inner work. But before we get into today, I have a few announcements to make, so I think I should do that first before I forget. And the first one is Sister Suni, who's sitting there at the back. Where is she? This table or that table? This table, okay. On my right at the back, okay. She's sitting there, and so she has the pay machine for anyone who would like to offer a contribution. And for the foreign currency, it's just a tap, but it also accepts in Indonesian currency. Okay. And then also for those who will be departing tomorrow, I'm sorry I need to bring that up, but just for logistical reasons, there's a sheet there at the back as well that's got your travel details. And we'd just like you to just make sure that the details are accurate there, so that the logistical team can do the right arrangements for you. So that too is at the back there where the clock is. That's where that sheet is. And I hope you'll notice while we were having the meditation or before, the new lovely decoration in front of us. So the symbol there is the Hayun symbol, which is that symbol of time. And above it is a symbol of the source. So our connection with time and our dance with the divine. So that's the symbol for today. So yes, so this morning, before we go into the period of silence, I've asked Sister Gayatri just to share a little bit. I think something that Brother Charlie highlighted this morning, which is such an important element, you know, that the mind follows the heart. So whatever's sitting in the heart impacts the mind. And so yesterday, a few themes that came up, you know, we talked about dealing with difficult emotions, dealing with anger, how do we transform that, how we deal with things that have had a traumatic impact on us. So all of these things sits in our heart, and though we're trying to make the mind quiet and still, but if those things are sitting in the heart, then it's very difficult to let the mind become clear and still and connect. So this morning's focus is really on how to clean and clear the heart, because that will then allow us then to move forward in our journey. And in order to look at that, I think Sister Gayatri is also going to link it with how we can use silence to do that inner work that we need to, of cleaning and clearing the heart. Just one other aspect that came up yesterday as well, I think we spoke a lot about self-care, but also this element of how we can serve in a sustainable way. So if we know how to nourish ourselves, then our service can be sustainable and we don't feel depleted or feel, that burnt out in a way, because that does happen as well. So these are some of the elements that we want to take up from what was shared yesterday, and Sister Gayatri will just share some reflections so that we can begin to contemplate on that and see how we can work with that, especially during our time of silence. So I'm going to hand over to Sister Gayatri.
Good morning, everyone. Are you content? Is the body content with the food, with the environment, with the sleep? How about the soul? The soul is good. Well, it's a nice entry point into your silence today, because there's a double contentment. Contentment of body and contentment of soul. How many of you were here for the early morning meditation? Yeah, great. In that meditation, even though you're hearing the water, you're hearing the natural sounds of nature, the thought that I was left with after the period of time is faith is the bird that sees the light when the dawn is still dark. Tagore. Of course, I could never come up with something like that. Faith is the bird that sees the light when the dawn is still dark. So today, you're going to be spending, or we all are going to be spending, an extended time in silence. Now, this word silence, for different people, it means different things. When you were a kid and you misbehave a little bit, what did your parents do? Go into that room. And you were put into a room, and it came to be known in some cultures, or you're going to be put into the dark room. Or when I was growing up, I was always allowed, as you may be picking up from my personality by now, I'm working on it. I tend to be very opinionated. And so I always have something to say. And my older cousins, who were, of course, men, boys, would say to me, Gayatri, ladies should be seen and not heard. And so that was a kind of silence, right? So there were all sorts, and I'm sure you all would relate to silence in negative ways. And then I came on a path which was called a spiritual path, and I was told that the language of God was silent. And to listen to the whispers of this imaginary friend called God, imagine is another word, you needed to be silent. And I know you all know this because it's common. It's the same letters that is used to spell the word silent and listen. They're the same letters. So in order to listen, especially to the whispers of God, the soul needs to be silent. And then I met some Quakers. And of course, the culture of the Quakers is everything is done in silence. And that's a very beautiful culture that they have. And so silence then start changing in my own understanding of the word. And I begin to appreciate more and more how important it is to be in silence, because silence speaks louder than words. Because I give my presence permission to express itself in a natural way when I'm silent. Today, in this silence that we're going to be observing from 10:15, and I hope I can finish at 10:15 because I want to say so much to you, but I will control. Ladies should be seen and not heard. And so I will try to finish by 10:15, and then maybe we do 15 minutes of collective entry point into our silence, collective silence, and that will be the entry point into our silence. And then, of course, we will regather here at 4:30, and at that time, we will come out of the silence. The silence here, before I go into the inner workings of silence or to the deep work that I would be offering to you to do in silence, it is that the silence is meant to be an absence of words. So we're asking you not to speak. And in a way, we're also asking you to observe being introverted. And an easy way to understand that word being introverted is a little bit like turning your face within. Our faces are usually looking out, right? So we're always observing what's going on outside of us. But the value, the virtue of being introverted is to turn your face within. So you're going to be looking at what's going on inside of you. And don't be afraid. Embrace the mystery that you're about to encounter inside of you. 90% of our potential we're not using. That's not just brain sense, but it's 90% of the soul's potential that we're going to be embracing, that we're not using, and it will rise out of our silence. So, the silence is also, you're going to be communicating with your eyes. So even though you're not communicating with your words, you are not going to ignore the person, or you're not going to ignore the beauty, or you're not going to ignore something that may be calling your attention to that you need to act to make a difference with. But in case you see someone about to trip, you're not going to, oh, I'm silent, so I'm not going to help them. So you're going to communicate with your eyes. And so when you, in the silence, the eyes sees differently. The eyes would see differently. So when you look at the other, make eye contact and connect your spark to their spark. And look at them and smile. Silence doesn't mean you don't smile. You smile with them. You appreciate things with the eyes. So So the eyes would be very important in your period of silence. The other thing about the silence is that we heard a lot about self-care yesterday. And usually, another thing about silence, it's when you become silent, the body, what gets triggered in the body, it's time to sleep. And so you may find that the body is saying, oh, I'm tired. I want to sleep. Now, there is an intelligence in our bodies. There's an intelligence in our cells. The cells carry a lot of memories. And so if that is what the body is asking, give it to the body. Care for the body. And so if the body is saying, I want to rest, I want to sleep. Sleep, but don't sleep for all the hours from 10:15 to 4:30, right? Because you may just miss the whisper. You may think it's a dream and dismiss it. So you can do that. Lunch will be in silence. And the silence of the lunch, you may hear, if it's salad, I don't know what is lunch, but if it's salad, you'll hear your neighbor chewing, and you'll hear yourself chewing. And that's one thing, so it's all right. You're listening differently. The soul is listening through the body. But also, you're going to appreciate the food in a very different way, because usually having meals is a time to socialize. But today you're not socializing with words, but you're socializing in silence. And so the food may taste differently. It may taste better because the soul is being consciously aware of the offering of Mother Nature to its sustenance. And so it will be eating with that gratitude. And to eat what Mother Nature offers with gratitude is a very beautiful experience to have at the time of eating food, and to being grateful for that. So there are many, many more things you could do in the silence. You'll be given a journal, you'll be given a little book with signals from Daddy Janki, which you may read, and you may find subtle signals. The book is actually called Subtle Signals. That would be useful to you in terms of what is emerging from the soul. We ask you to put your device on hold, except if you may have to have a urgent call. Guys, you could keep yours on and nearby in case your mom calls you. And I would ask us later on to hold Giles, right? That's your name? Yes, you. What's his name? Schubert? Okay, sorry. So your mom, we could hold in our remembrance, because his mom is 98 years old and is getting a little bit anxious, and so is reaching out to him to help ease that anxiety. And so you could keep your phone on, but the rest of us, let us put the phones away for a bit. You could check it before you go into the silence, and then check it again after you come out of the silence. And you would be surprised that you don't really need your cell phone at the tip of your touch. You to be touching it all the time. Just so put it away. Put all your devices away and really value this time. So I think I've covered it all. Charlie, is there anything I'm left out? Try not to read that novel you brought with you. Right? Put it away as well. Because this is really deep work you're doing with yourself. So don't have any distractions. And even not, music is beautiful, but listen to the natural sounds of nature. Let nature be your music for today. No Ayako, no Heather, no other types of music, right? Let nature entertain you. So what are we going to do with these hours in silence? So I'll read some things to you that, something that I really like, and it is taken. I don't know if you have read his book, but if you haven't, I recommend it, not today, but when you get back home. It's Parker Palmer's Let Your Life Speak. I don't know if anyone has read that book. But he is talking, of course, very much full of in the domain of silence, and he's talking about silence, and he's talking about silence in recognizing your vocation and being more in touch with that and purpose and all of that. And this is what he said about silence, which I feel is a very beautiful piece to understand what really happens when we go into silence. He says that there will be, silence is made up of all these hours, but these hours are made up of moments. So he says that there will be moments, in these moments, when things will become clear. Your subtle insight will see that the life you are living is perhaps not the same as the life that wants to be lived in you. The life you are living is perhaps not the same as the life that wants to be lived in you. So in your silence, you will listen to your life. Your life will speak to you, and maybe in that heart-to-heart conversation, it will tell you whether it's the same. The life you're living under the pressures of society, etc., or whether it's the life that wants to be lived in you. So you will listen to that, listen to your life speak to you in a heart-to-heart conversation. The second is this, looking with this deep insight into yourself. What are you going to look for? You will catch glimpses of your authentic self, of your true self. Your true self will show itself to you. One of the things about seeing is connected to appreciating. If I could see someone, that person having been seen by me, would feel that they exist for me. But if I don't see them, if they're here in the room but I haven't connected with them, and they don't think they have been seen by me, then they don't feel appreciated by me. And it's the same thing with ourselves. Why is it the authentic self is so elusive? It's because we don't see it. And if we don't see it, we won't be able to appreciate it. So that's another thing that would happen. We would see the authentic self, and we'll catch glimpses of the authentic self. He went on to say, you may be uncertain about the deepest true life hidden inside you. And the uncertainty is whether it is real or trustworthy and within reach. We all know deep in our subconscious there's that authentic self. But why is it so elusive? It's because we haven't seen it. And so we wonder whether it is real, trustworthy, or within or reach. Now, going into the silence, I'd like to raise a few of the questions that came out yesterday that I think would be very important in this cleaning of the heart. So when we enter into the silence with this introversion, we are entering to look into the mirror of our hearts. Now, the heart is this organ that I have in my body that is supposed to be the largest muscle in the body. And so the heart is here. But the feelings are in the soul. So the heart of the soul are my feelings, is where my feelings are. And so when I look into the mirror of my heart, I'll be looking into something that perhaps I don't look at regularly, on a regular basis, and that is I'll be looking at my feelings. And so looking at my feelings, I would also know about, it will tell me, my feelings will speak to me in the way I feel about what I'm seeing, but also the thoughts that I'm having about what I'm feeling. Now, yesterday, Harman shared an experience of living in Pakistan in which he talked about the greeting that they have. And in that greeting is a connection. In the greeting, there is a meeting. In the greeting, there's a great kind of acknowledging one another. And I'd like to share a story about that. And it's in relation to how we see ourselves, to how we greet ourselves. And that is someone from America, and this is a true story, went to Nepal, and he was going up the Himalayas, and he saw this child with her mother. And he says usually when he is in a foreign country, he engages with the culture through children. So he went up to this kid and he said, how do you say good morning in your language? And the child responded, namaste. And he then asked her, what do you mean by namaste? And she said, I bow to the divinity in you. And she asked him the question, how do you say namaste in your language? And he said, good morning. And she said, well, what does good morning mean? And he had no answer. So going inside and looking at the feelings in the soul is called meaning making. You're making meaning of this, I call it spiritual intelligence, which is speaking to you through your heart and through your pure feelings. Now, we heard this morning, or I think it was Kim who said it, that you may think that transformation is at the level of thoughts, but I can train my mind to think positive. But if I don't transform my feelings will be the volcanic eruption that will knock the thoughts out like anything. So I may think I'm in control, but if I don't transform those feelings, I'm not in control. Because they will deceive me. And I'm usually deceived by my feelings. I may say, but I thought I was so positive in my thinking. Where did that outburst come from? And so we're entering into a silence that is called a transformative silence. And transformative silence is a silence that is with connection. So when I'm connecting to myself and I'm connecting to the divine, what is happening to the soul is getting new insights of itself, and it's making meaning of those insights at the level of feelings and at the level of thoughts. So at the level of understanding, but at the level of experiencing. So that is one thing you're going to be doing with the feelings that will be running through the soul, because you're cleaning your heart, remember? And you're looking into the mirror of the heart. And meaning making requires us to be honest with ourselves. Honesty, the erosion of honesty is not with others. The erosion of honesty is with me and myself. And so you're going to revisit that honesty with you and your feelings. And honesty is usually connected to loving kindness. So when you're honest with yourself, there will be that loving kindness for yourself. You wouldn't be the judge, you wouldn't be the lawyer, you wouldn't condemn yourself, you wouldn't be guilty. So all of that, take into consideration that if I'm honest, I'll be loving and kind to myself. And in the understanding, you would also realize that there must be a love in that understanding as well. And that love is usually a compassionate love for yourself. Yesterday, many people talked about, some people, not many, talked about anger or guilt or whatever may be the negative emotion. So to transform that negative emotion, I'll just give an example of anger. I was extremely angry about something because I was working on a project for children, and I'm flying from one country to the other, and there was in those days they used to leave newspapers on your plane seats or in the pocket. And I read about the gang rape of a teenager. And because I was working on this Living Values project, I became extremely angry to say, you know, how can innocence be destroyed so violently? And then I was going to a call of the time in this country, and when I arrived, I checked in, like we did, and I talked about how angry I was. And I said, you know, Daddy Janki was in the circle. And I said, but it's all right, because I've taken my anger and I've recommitted myself to this project. So now I'm passionate about going back and doing this and helping children. And then after Daddy Janki, when we were going into silence, she said to me, now look at the connection between anger, passion, and compassion. And she says, not until you move anger to compassion would you be effective in what you're doing. So the transformative field would be having the compassion to understand what is going on inside of you that could create blockages in the work that is most meaningful to you. And then you transform it. But you would need the compassion for the self and the loving kindness for the self in order to do that. There was another question that was in the room yesterday, and that is the levels of consciousness and how you, as a conscious being, can make a difference out there. Well, there are levels of consciousness out here. Every system has got levels of consciousness. But when we move within our silence, we may be looking at ourselves and seeing levels of consciousness within our own selves. And there is like, I'm Gemini by birth, so I'm a twin sign. And so they're like twins inside of us. One is what Charlie would call the self that is, there's the permanent self. I call it the indigenous self, the self that is original to who I am. The other is my acquired self, the ones I acquired through layers of identity. And for me, it would be many births. For some of you, maybe in this very one birth. And so I'm going to be looking at myself like this. And I'm going to cut through these levels of consciousness, because every layer to my identity creates a different consciousness in me. And that's something you're going to be looking at, that with which lens of identity am I looking at myself through, would be the consciousness I would have of myself. And so look at yourself like that. And the one consciousness that we should be looking at ourselves with to cut through all the acquired identities is this indigenous identity of soul consciousness, or this permanent identity of soul consciousness. And then I'm able to see what is going on in the heart, the footprints of which these identities, or the prints that these identities have left on me. And think about it a little bit like the ocean coming on to the sand. And you know, when the water of the ocean come onto the sand, what happens? If people have walked there and left their footprints, the sand would just smooth it out. I mean, the water would just smooth it out. Just think about love like that. That when the love flows through me from the Supreme in my silence, it really would remove those imprints that have been left on my heart. And the love would take them away and would heal me. But I need to know what lens I'm looking at myself and looking at my heart. So that, for me, is very important. Go back to your core consciousness and then look at all the levels of identity and the consciousness, the different levels of consciousness that you may have created for yourself, and clean that up. Clean it up and see yourself in your original way of being. And then there was another story that I found was the high point for me yesterday, Robert, when you spoke. And that is, I'd like to give you a kind of a diagram. When you, I'll tell you the story just now. When you go into your silence and you're looking into the mirror of your heart, you're going to be standing in the present. And as Parker Palmer said, moment by moment, you can see something different about yourself. Each moment in these, how many hours we're going to be, is actually could reveal things to you. And so as you're standing in the present, it's the now. And there's power in the now. But this present is a neutral space. It's a space that we call the confluence. It's a space between the past and the future. So what silence is inviting us to do in this cleansing process is not to look back, and it's not to look forward, but to keep in the present. Now, this confluence is also a meeting point between the soul and God. Now, in this confluence, as I would call it, there is what a quote I would give you, and this time it's by Rumi. It's a place that he describes in one of his poems as somewhere between right and wrong, there's a space. I will meet you there. So why is it you don't look back or you don't look forward? It's because you want to stay with the now, and you want to see yourself in this neutral place, and you want to see yourself outside of the dualities. You want to be united in the remembrance of God and in the remembrance of your true self. And so stay in this space. There's no right and wrong. There's just you and the Supreme and God. And this meeting is taking place. But you're meeting yourself there. It's a neutral place because it calls on us not to judge ourselves, not to be guilty about a past that I may not be responsible for, even though I may have experienced it. I may live through it. Not to look into the future, because when we look at the past and we look at all the unresolved issues, and Charlie was telling us about some of it this morning, all the issues that are left unresolved, all the distortions that have been left in our hearts through relationships. And each distortion has an image that we're attached to or we're blaming for that pain in our hearts. So we don't want to go down that route, so we're not going to look at the past. And then when we look at the future, there's a whole lot of anxiety. What is going to happen? The fear of the unknown. And so, is AI going to take over my life? And am I going to have an identity that is not mine, speaking for me and telling my relatives that they're me and they're believing it? You know, all these fears of where we could be going. Am I going to be worried when I look at the future for my grandchildren, who will be perhaps the alpha generation, who are going to be totally under the influence of AI? So don't look into the future. Stay, because that's a lot of anxiety, but stay with the present and stay in this domain of neutrality. Because if I look back, I'm looking back at the darkness. And if I look forward, I may want to see the light or the new world or the peace or whatever I'm looking for in the world. And I may try to create it from something I think would happen. But if I stay in the present, I'm actually experiencing something that is emerging from within me. And this is the story that was my high point from Rob. And that is, I was talking about subtle activism and subtle advocacy yesterday. And he spoke up and said that we must not transform, or it shouldn't be, that transformation, and I'm paraphrasing in my own words, should be with a resistance to something. And I heard that loud and clear. And later on in my own reflection, I said, yes, what he said was absolutely right. Because in our transformation, when we go into the silence of the soul, and I want to transform, I'm either doing it in the past, and I'm resisting something, or I'm doing it in the future, and I don't know what it is to expect. So there's still something there. But if I do it in this neutral space, then what is naturally within me will be given expression. And that expression will be true to myself. And I really like that. And that was when I noticed that maybe our fault or mistake is to either be in the past or the future when transformation was happening in the now. So try to be in this beautiful space that Rumi speaks about or spoke about, and is still so relevant to this transformative field of silence in which transformation takes place. And finally, I would say in your silence, to know that you're entering a zone of what I would call life, love, liberty, which is freedom, and lifelong learning. So all of this would be happening. You're encountering in this space, this neutral space of the confluence age, in your connection to yourself, connection to God, at a very benevolent time, which is here and now. You're looking at life, you're looking at love, you're looking at liberty, and you're looking at your process of lifelong learning. And lifelong learning, these 4 L's is actually the evolution of the soul in the domain of transformative silence. Life is sacred, whether we're living in the night or we're living in the day. The sanctity of life is forgotten, but it's never removed. And so I feel that in the silence that we're having today, we should remember that. We may have forgotten the soul, the spark of life. We may have forgotten the divine. We may have forgotten what is indigenous or permanent within us. But this is the time to remember. Remember it. Your cells remember. The cells in the body remember. The soul remembers. But what the soul remembers will be according to the lens of consciousness that you look at yourself with. So you choose your lens. You choose what meaning making you want to have. And you choose what are the elements in the heart that you would like to remove. And remove them. So going into your silence finally is a time for getting and for giving. So forget the past and forgive yourself in the present. Because that's what the heart is all about. And that's what the heart needs from you now. It's that spiritual act of forgiveness. Om Shanti, thank you. And I'll open it for 5 minutes in case you want to ask me anything as you go into your silence of cleaning yourself up. Something I may say that didn't make sense and you want some clarity on. Something that you may want to clarify before you enter into the silence, because now I'm going to hand it over to Kim and Pratibha, and they will then take us into the silence. Was there anything you wanted to clarify? Yes, Mariam.
Very quick question about getting a tip. Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. Staying in that space of between right and wrong, the neutral space, I found it very challenging, and I want a tip. Because, the mind has the tendency going to the future or going to the past. Any tip that you can give us?
I would give you the tip of stop. When you're at the traffic light, you stop, especially if you know there's a camera there, right? Because cameras don't lie. You stop. Don't roll over or don't roll back. Just come to a stop. And this is where a kind of, you go into your silence with a determination in which, my thoughts, I have a control over them. And when I find my thoughts are traveling to the past, just say stop. And if they don't stop, you're going to have to figure out, why aren't they stopping? What is it that's pulling it to the past? And what is it doing to my heart? Because if it pulls me to the past, I'm responsible for that. I choose to go to the past. And this is why I think that exercise the power of choice and say stop. But in the stop, you have to connect it to something in the present. To look for something in the present to engage with, to engage the mind with, so that it isn't pulled back to a past that you don't want to go back to, or worrying of a future. Pull it back. It's the now. Now is what matters. Let me enjoy the now. Because I don't want to be chained. I don't want to be a slave to my past. or a Pollyanna of my future?
Yes, and remembering. I just remembered that Charlie also mentioned remembering.
Right, but you could remember both, but you stopped the
No,
remembrance.
remembering the one I meant.
Yes, remembering the one, remembering the now, and remembering yourself.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, when you talk about the silence is the heart of your consciousness, and you said we choose element in heart to be removed. If it's not in the past, how can we remove it?
Sorry?
You said that we choose the element in the heart to be removed. But if you don't take a look at the past, how can we remove the element in the heart?
Okay, what you're doing is that if there, of course, you're right. Everything that we are experiencing in the present is connected to the past.
Exactly.
Well, the past, been there, done that. So you use that slogan, I've been there, I've done that. I have a present to do something different, to feel something different, to appreciate myself in a different way. The lens that you use to look at the present will remove you from the chains of your past. But if you use the lens of the past to look at yourself in the present, there is no present.
Okay.
You're living and defining yourself based on the past. So how can you ever correct the past in terms of how you experience that past? You may not be able to correct it in terms of people, places, possessions, etc. Well, what you're working on is the experience, the impact, the print, the pattern it has left in you. And that's what you are forgetting and forgiving and removing. Got it? So what's the lens you're going to look at the present if that past comes in front of you in your silence? That's what's important.
Okay, I try to understand. Thank you.
I have a question more like a logistical thing. So here we are taking notes. So during the silence, we don't take notes? Or do we note?
No, you journal.
You journal.
You journal.
Okay.
You can journal.
Okay.
Thanks for that. Yes, you can journal. It's a beautiful thing because what you're journaling is what's emerging from within you, and you're not getting input from outside through words. The only input you're getting from the outside is the beautiful nature around you. And of course, your connection with God and yourself.
It's kind of follow-up question with that, with journaling. So what we journal is what we feel at the moment, or can I journal about the life I want to create?
Leave that for tomorrow. Leave the life you want to create for tomorrow. But today you're going through a cleansing process.
Okay, so the journal of the feeling, whatever
Yes.
I feel that moment.
Yes,
Right?
and concentrate more on the feelings rather than on your thoughts.
Okay. And I want to understand about the purify the heart through silence. So with your explanation, do I understand correctly that if we look through the lens of the present, so it's like the process to purify the heart because we are not attached to whatever happened or any imprint from the past. Is that correct?
That is the first step. The second step is you will have, if there's grief in the heart based on what happened in the past or what you're desiring of the future, then that is a feeling that will emerge in you. It may emerge as doubt, it may emerge as fear, it may emerge as a sorrow, it may emerge as disheartenment, but there will be an emotion there that will emerge. Now, try not to connect it and blame a past for it, or connect it to a future that you don't know what is going to happen. So this is the time you connect it to the Supreme. And it's as though you're taking it and you're allowing the rays of God to saturate that emotion within you and the rays of love coming from God into you to heal it. And that is a very beautiful process. That's a deep process. And I know of people sometimes just feeling something emerged and it was heavy, and they just lie down somewhere and felt the sun beaming down on them and visualizing it as the rays of God, the Supreme Being using the sun to radiate on them, and it helped clear it. Because sometimes, you know, you need some physical aids, and nature would be a lovely aid for you. But inside of you, you know that the love is coming from a supreme source to help heal what's going on. And then you journal about it, you know, after you just journal to capture those moments.
And what you explained to her, it's about that if we have the thought from the past, and we should say stopped, right? But if we cannot stop, what do you recommend us doing? I didn't catch that part.
Okay, I told her stop and then engage herself into something in the present, something beautiful. And then, if it's still not going away, you could journal it, you could write it. Process it by writing it down in your journal.
So process that thought.
Yeah, process
the
that
journal.
feeling. Process that feeling. Remember, it's your heart, so you're looking at feelings. But you're going to process it through thoughts because you're going to write them. But you're looking at the feeling. Now, if it still isn't going away and it's bothering you, this is something I didn't mention to you, but I'll mention it now. One of us, Charlie, myself, Kim, or Pratibha, will be here for you to break your silence in words, and you could speak to us about it. And that may help as well.
Okay.
But try to process it yourself, because you're going to leave here becoming empowered to do it yourself when you leave here. But if you feel you have to talk about it because it's so heavy in you, then you could ask one of us to talk to us.
So when you mentioned about describing the feeling from whatever the thought that related to the parts, so it means whatever come up from the feeling and any related thing, so write it down, right? Yeah. Okay, two more things. Can we have the
Could I just, before you do that deep breath, I just want to say, before you go into the silence, please do not go into your silence with any heaviness. All right? So if there is anything you want to still clarify before going into the silence, I'm available. Okay? To you individually. The thing about this silence process is you can't rush into the silence. It's not time-bound. You know, you have to go into it ready to go into it, okay? So I know that we have a time here of 10:15. I know we've gone over it, but I just wanted to make sure everyone was ready for it and ready to go into it and isn't carrying any kind of heaviness, okay? So let's go back to the facilitators, all right? And if you have anything that you want to clear before going into the silence, I'm available. Okay?
We have a lovely thing to do as a ritual to bring us into the silence in a second. I want to just thank you, Sister Gayatri. I think that's an incredible talk. You have this one-pointed intellect that I think personally is really inspiring, to see what are the things that stand in our way and how do we focus this mind, this all-powerful mind. And if we think what Charlie said this morning and we put these two together, this deep love of God and this all-powerful mind, these are ours. In 1 second we can do this work. And as Rumi also said, come again, whoever you are. Even if you have come 1,000 times, come again. This is the beckoning of silence. Now over to my wonderful sister Pratibha.
Thank you. So I think before we lead into the silence, we'll have a bit of collective meditation together so that it prepares us energetically as we move into silence. And then I'm going to invite each one of you to come forward, and we have a special blessing card to give each one of you to enter your silence with, and a little toli, and then the book that Gayatri had mentioned about, which is Subtle Signals from Daddy Janki, which will be like a companion for you to use in the silence itself. So when you come up in front, when I invite you, so Charlie will give the one thing and Gayatri the other. Some of you who have been with the BKs are familiar with this term, but those of you who are here for the first time, we have this term called drishti, okay? And drishti really is the sharing of spiritual vision through the eyes. We share, you know, they say the eyes are the windows to the soul. And so it's really the sharing of spiritual energy with each other. And so when you come in front, it will be this beautiful exchange of spiritual energy with each other. And so you can focus on the forehead and just exchange that drishti of light and love with each other, that spiritual vision of going beyond the physical and connecting with the soul, and then accept the little gift that will be given to you to enter your silence. So that will be a little beautiful way for us to just lead from the space of sound into that inner space that we can be with ourselves. And so nature is abundant here. Find your little corner where you can sit. There's lovely little spots scattered all over the place. And so just enjoy this quietness, enjoy this moment of introversion, and allow yourself to be nourished from within. So first we'll have some meditation, and then I will invite you. Give it to Charlie.
Deep peace over all.
So when you're ready, please come forward to Charlie and Sister Gayatri. Thank you.
Shanti.